Previously on midlifing.
So
that was one piece of news that
I love that you led with that.
Well, because
is that being modest?
Well, it might be being modest, and also it's because somebody at the drinks party that I attended as a result of the other piece of news, they came out and saw me get into my car, and then they asked, "Oh, is this because of your professorial increase in wages that you bought yourself a new car?"
Oh, I love that you slipped it in like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everything in between, you are now talking with one. No, that's not right. You're listening to a professor and someone who's not yet a professor, who's a failed. So just amazing Professor Lee David Miller. Lee is now a professor, if you hadn't already guessed, and that is just amazing. Big congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you feel extra scholarly? Do you feel like you're smarter now?
No, I really don't. I don't.
Do you think you deserved it? This is a podcast in which two friends talk about the pleasures, absurdities, and imperfections of being human. I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller. Welcome to Midlifing. Oh, now that's a really interesting question.
I don't mean it to be a mean one either. I don't.
No. Somebody else. So I've known about this for a little while, and you've known about this for a little while.
It's
because
true.
It has been. It was. The process is you put in like a first stage. Because Simon, you've talked about this when you were going through that process yourself, and it's quite onerous, isn't it?
Yes, and more onerous if you're not successful.
Whoa! What I meant is you have to put in an awful lot of effort at that first stage.
Yes, it's a chunky application.
Yeah. And in some respects, all of the work is done at that first hurdle.
No question.
Not all of the work. A significant amount of the work is done at that first hurdle. And so I didn't tell Simon. I don't know who I'm talking to now because I'm sort of addressing the ears that aren't yours. That's weird, Simon. I told Simon that I'd put in the application only after the first hurdle had been cleared.
Because he put in the application. Sorry, you put in the application. Oh, we're both suffering from the same weird pronoun disease. Isn't that a Dire Straits song? Pronoun disease? No, it's industrial disease. Yes, it was about the time that I was unsuccessful, and you were being sensitive to my disappointment, my failure.
Disappointment, because it's not a failure. Exactly that.
It was a failure. I failed at my attempt to. Don't you think?
Oh, well, it comes back to your question about do I think I deserve it?
Yeah.
Which I will come back to.
Great.
So that I told you after the first hurdle, and then I told you that I'd put in an application, and then after that there is a process whereby your references are called, and there's external. There's a lot of people who don't know you who scrutinise it as well, which is quite. It made me feel quite sick. Then I found out, and I probably found out about a month ago, maybe. I got the
sounds
official,
about right. Yeah.
Yeah. I got
maybe
the letter,
a little less, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But it probably feels like about.
Well, by the time this comes out, it might be even 2 months ago.
It will be, yeah. And it was clear that we were not supposed to kind of make it public, so I didn't talk about it on the podcast.
Well, we did actually.
Or
I
else.
tried to drag you into it, and you said it's not really.
But the question: do I think I deserve it?
Which is a different question from did you pass all the, however like the
Did I meet the
requirements,
criteria?
the criteria. Thank you, is the word I was looking for.
Did I meet the criteria? Absolutely, I did meet the criteria, and I felt confident that in my interpretation of the criteria, I met them.
Well,
and
this is where you have to be careful here, because it starts to wind me up big time. Actually, this part of, in my experience of it, but I'm not sure.
I'd be interested in knowing.
Yes.
Why?
No, you keep going. You keep going.
Oh, so I was just in my interpretation.
You met the criteria,
but that doesn't mean that I had met the criteria. It just meant that I felt that it was it wasn't a swing that I thought, oh, this could be a swing and a miss. It felt like this is a credible moment for me to be making this bid, and I think how I've understood everything, I tick the boxes in the way that they need to be ticked. Thereafter, it's like, well, who knows? Because that's where there's a whole panel of people who might go, no, you've misunderstood it. You've not quite read the runes correctly. And that's not what is meant.
So do you think you deserved it?
Yeah, I do. I think I deserved it. I think the way I would answer it is this. I don't want to diminish its importance to me, but I also don't want to get too invested in what it means, because there are enough people who I think are incredible scholars in other institutions who have not been valued. I can see that there is enough wiggle room across the sector for me to go, I value it, and I think in the context of the university in which I am working in this particular moment, it was I deserve it, and it was a good thing. That's not very eloquent, but I'm also trying not to invest too much import in it in the bigger scheme of things, because there are people who I respect, who respect greatly as scholars, who haven't been successful in their applications. Does that make sense as a distinction?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's a really interesting one too.
Yeah, so I think I know that there are other metrics that are being considered as well. It just means that to get too invested in it as a, I think that's why I'm fudging and hedging.
Yeah, I can really hear it. Yeah, it's
because you asked me, do I deserve it? And that's such a loaded question.
Yes, I didn't.
No, I don't mean you have asked me a loaded question that was deliberately designed to trip me up. I mean the notion of who deserves what is so loaded. Who gets opportunities?
They're just desserts.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. Do I think? Yeah. I'm curious about why
I mean, it rings all sorts of meritocracy bells, doesn't it? Because not the very least, because in all that hedging, there is understanding. If I put words into your mouth, which is a bit unfair of me, but I guess I was hearing understanding of just that if you put too much. An understanding that if you put too much sway in it, or too much hold on it, or too much love for it, or that you bathe in the prestige, then it means you're failing to recognise, not least of all, luck, but also those who have deserved it and weren't and haven't had that reward. It's a really complex thing to do, because you need to take pleasure in it, or no, you don't need to, but you ought to take pleasure in it and be incredibly satisfied in that, in the honour and the esteem. No question about it. But boy, if you start questioning any kind of sense of meritocracy or just desserts, then it's tricky. Becomes tricky.
And I think that's why I didn't bridle at you asking, do I deserve it? Because I understand what the question is, but it's why I hedge so furiously. but I think in the
I love a bit of furious
institution-
hedging.
I think in the institution that I'm working in right now, it feels like this was a just outcome, and that's possibly because I can see the work of the people who were also rewarded at the same time, and found myself to be in company which I was very, very proud to be standing alongside of, because these are people who I think are quite impressively gifted people.
Yes, but the flip side of that though is to be standing alongside the people that didn't.
Yeah.
And do you see the
Who I
do you
can't see.
distinguish your? That's to me that's a more important question. Well, not a more important. It's just a different question.
But it's a question. It's an impossible question to answer, because I'm not standing alongside of those people who didn't, because I don't know who they are. Because you asked me that question of do I have a sense of
you don't
of how many? It's like no, I've genuinely not the slightest clue. But I would like to return to the hotness that that sort of was spurred when I was talking about the idea of feeling that I'd met the criteria.
Oh
and
yeah,
that was
no,
something
it's
you
simple.
said I've got to stop talking. We've got to stop talking about this and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it just pisses me off because it's simple, really. Because the reason I was told that my application was unsuccessful was there was a single reason, and that reason was a very minor part of the criteria. It was buried within one part of one, a sort of part within a part of a part kind of thing. And so you had to go, and so I remember asking him, oh wait, so this is an unspoken, you have to pass this criteria, that if you haven't got this, then nothing else happens. Because if I'd known that, I wouldn't have applied. And they just, the person goes, like that.
Okay. And
so
this
yeah,
can be cut out
no, it's fine.
This can be cut out. No, I don't mean the bit we just said. I mean the bit that I'm about to ask you now, because what was that invisible thing?
Money.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because it all it does to me is what it did to me. No, I think it also is. I think this aspect of this is a strange conversation because it's a little bit deep in our world, really. But I suspect it happens all the time in the professional world, in any kind of situation where there seem to be rules that exist that are implicit, and the inability for management, not just talking about my institution or yours or any other or academia in general, just businesses, because we work in these businesses now, their inability to make processes transparent blows my mind. It's incredible. And so you realize that this is, well, more or less, it's a boys' club. It's a white boys' club, actually. I tick all those boxes. And so the kind of the idea of clubbiness in it, it really, and how it is that those rules are shaped and not told and then told, it just seems it seems so low bar, and also it's really bad for morale of a place. I mean, I'm fine. I'm seriously fine about it. But even talking about it makes me a little bit like,
So
again, not wanting to strip anything from, because I do think you deserved it, and I think you're an extraordinary scholar of, even if you can't use Trello that well, and but
hey,
I think what you
I
said.
Still got the last issue out. Woo! Nearly. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me curious about where, and okay, I'll say this clearly now. Absolutely, we have disappeared up our own fundament in the fact that we're talking about a very specific thing to our roles in a particular institution.
Yes, but it is also a conversation
context.
about the things we deserve and how we imagine we deserve them, and when we don't. And those things they're much bigger than the conversation. So please, listeners, if you're hearing this and going, "Oh, get out of your asses," then just imagine yourselves in any kind of situation when you've been passed over, or when you've earned something or been rewarded. Did you earn it? Did you deserve it? Like, what are the machinations of being deserving or of being passed over? Those things are much bigger than academia.
Oh, for sure, and I think that's where my next question for you comes from is, what do you do with that frustration and that disappointment and that sense that it's a boys' club, or that that there's no, that meritocracy is out of the window, that decisions have already been made, that there's a hidden set of rules that might even change again, even though you think you know what the rules are now. How does that make you feel about doing it again? Putting in an application at some point in the future.
Oh, well, first of all, I think it's really tricky, because it's sort of like, to me, it's a kind of question about self-esteem, which is, how is it that each of us chooses to define ourselves by not only our successes but our failures? And I think of myself as reasonably resilient, but at the same time, I really do get frustrated by a lack of transparency in the workplace. Like, it really irks me. And it irks me because I don't think it's that hard to do, but I think it does require a certain amount of energy and diligence and care. And so that stuff, that part of it, that really it winds me up, and so it makes me a little bit like, you know what? Do I really want it? Do I really want it? Does it change how much I care for what I do? Meaning, the things I'm involved in, does it change my attitude towards those? Not really at all. So I'm a little bit like, just keep my head down, really. Which is ducking your question as part of keeping my head down. I'm certainly not, if this criteria that was bigger than it seemed to be, I'm certainly not going to apply unless I seem to have ticked that particular gigantic box.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I think it was less connected to, my question was less connected to ego or a sense of self-esteem, but more about, I guess this isn't quite the right word, but it's about righteousness. That then I did say it's not the right word, so that I heard the intake of breath, but
no, I was thinking about I think about like, I'll show them kind of thing.
No, it's not an I'll show them, because that's not what I mean. I think it's more like, if you feel that it is I think this is what I mean. If you think that it is fundamentally flawed and potentially fraudulent, are you tainted by returning to the process a second time?
I mean, it's a great question. It's such a great question, because implicit in the question, well, not even implicit in it, the question is really, for me, is a little bit like going, I mean, it's why I asked the question. It's not why, it's in the question, did you deserve it? Because you and I know that in any business, in any place of work, people are promoted who don't deserve it, and people who are not promoted who do deserve it. Like, that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I have this idea that if I were to become a professor, it's slightly weird, because I just do not want to take anything from your achievement. I just do not want to do that at all. I'm so proud. I'm so proud of what I
hear that, but I'm going to just I want to untangle that thing, because in this particular instance, the thing that you are struggling through, and trying to make sense of, and no matter how robustly or venomously you speak about the process, it cannot impact me for the simple reason that I was in a different place.
Sure.
So, you know,
sure. But I just don't want to sound. The thing is, I'm trying to avoid sounding like I'm a sore loser. You know.
No, I understand that, but I don't want you to be worrying about my feelings, because that's not the conversation that we're in.
No, I think I was more worried about how I sound. No, seriously. But I think the righteousness, is an interesting word, because if I were to do it again, I would want people to think that I deserved it. And of course, it's an absurd idea, because the reason I want that, because I know I hear the conversations about people who haven't deserved it. They're common.
Yeah.
And there are many reasons given as to why someone is awarded a professorship, right, or a promotion of any kind.
Yeah.
And so the sense of righteousness is this. It's an interesting word for me to haggle with internally, because I don't think of myself in that way, and yet I think I like to imagine that if it were conferred on me, I would be thinking, yes, I deserve this, and no one's going to be saying, wow, he didn't deserve that, given, look at his track record, look at all those things that, look at the contribution, etc., etc., etc. And I just don't think that's plausible. I think there is always going to be situations where there'll be people going,
yeah. I believe my my performance of Les Miserables yielded some interesting responses.
It did. I had a listener say that they would like you to perform the entire. This person said, I take musicals very seriously, and I want Lee to perform all of Les Miserables. And I assumed that meant all the parts. So I'd like you to start with Fontaine.
No, I'm starting with the overture.
I watched. No, I didn't watch all of it. I watched Hamilton.
You watched Hamilton?
Yeah, I've got past the first half. Oh man, it's long.
Okay, well done.
It's really good.
But
it's really
musical
good.
theatre is long. You got to remember that they've got to squeeze songs in. And there's quite a lot of songs.
Yeah.
And if you're going to stage something like that, you want to make your money back. So that's why it's got to be a good old long night out for people to feel happy.
That's really good. He does sound like a bit of a dick, though, Alexander Hamilton. I don't think that's not a synopsis for the.
I mean, it's an interesting takeaway.
But yeah, it's
Alexander
really good.
Hamilton.
It's really
sounds like a dick.
Sounds like a dick. Is really. I'd actually quite like to go and see it live, but.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Maybe when I become a professor, I'll shout myself a ticket. You bought an EV, and I'll buy a ticket to Hamilton.
I leased an EV.
Rise up, baby,
totally
rise up.
different.
Say it again.
Right, I said I leased it because I don't want people to think I can afford a car all
okay.
by myself.
It's good to be clear.
Rise up.
Good night.
Yeah. Good night.
Hey, nice to chat, and thanks everyone for listening.